How has the death of Samuel Paty affected this notion of secularism here in France?
Well, I think there's one event. We've all lived through the massacre of Charlie Hebdo and one of the Bataclan and numerous terrorist attacks in France. But one of the attacks that has, I think, shocked French public opinion the most was the beheading of Samuel Paty a year ago for simply showing the cartoons of the Prophet Mohammed to his class and saying to that class, those who don't want to see these can turn away or leave the classroom. So there is, I think, a before and an after the death of Samuel Paty for many in France, and particularly for teachers and those who are in the world of education, because there is growing fear now that the freedom of speech, the liberty to talk about any subject, to talk about religion freely and blasphemy, have all become much more complicated as a result of what happened to Samuel Paty last year. And if you look at some of the opinion polls here in France that have been published more recently, you can see that there has been a sharp decline in the freedom that teachers feel they have, down 14% since 2018 now. There are 49% of teachers who say Paty's murder has caused them to exercise a form of self-censorship. In other words, there are certain subjects they won't even talk about in class because they don't want to upset the pupils and don't want to cause trouble. That was something that never would have happened in the old days in classrooms in France because of this notion of what they call laïcité in France, which is basically a freedom of speech, and the fact that religion and the state are separate, and therefore all your differences should be left at the classroom door, so that there is a freedom of speech and expression which takes place in the classroom. That is different now than it was before the murder of Samuel Paty last year.
You're talking there about secularism. There's a perception by outsiders that French secularism may equate to being anti-Muslim.
Well, there are two things here. That is true. There is a feeling outside of France that France is anti-Muslim. France has the biggest Muslim community of any country in Europe, about 6 million. And the fact that back in 2011, the then Prime Minister, for secular reasons, banned the wearing of the burqa in public and religious insignia, not only for Muslims but also for Christians and for Jews, that was seen as an anti-Muslim move. And France's involvement in international military forces to stamp out the Islamic State, to clamp down on jihadist activity in North Africa, is also seen or perceived by many as being an anti-Muslim stance. So there is this feeling that France is anti-Muslim, but there is within France itself a big division between those who fear that Muslim poses a threat to the future of France, to the law of France, to everything that France stands for, and those who don't. And it's all coming to a head now with this presidential election campaign between one candidate called Éric Zemmour, who is growing in popularity in France, who is running on an anti-Muslim platform, the far right of Marine Le Pen. Both of those candidates are almost neck and neck in the opinion polls, just behind President Macron. President Macron, who has so far not declared his candidacy for the upcoming presidential elections. So there is this feeling in France that there is a threat, and it has been exacerbated by these terrorist attacks, and notably the attack against Samuel Paty last year. And it's a very complicated and touchy subject for many politicians in France, and there's no easy way out of this either.
Okay, International Affairs Editor Philip Turle. Philip, thanks so much.